This is the video that I'm actually was hesitant about saying. I said before in one of my videos that I was actually going to do a video on explaining like dimensions and all this other stuff, but this is basic stuff. And I'm also I'm not dumbing this down, but I'm putting it to where a basic person could understand what I'm saying. So this isn't just about, if you know who CERN is, CERN. If you know what CERN is, you know CERN are the mad scientists from Stranger Things. These mad scientists that talk about doing time travel. There's movies like Tomorrowland. There's Deja Vu with Denzel Washington. There's the movie Parallel on Amazon. There's I think it's called Looper, Looper. There's a lot of these time travel movies. That's what CERN is. CERN is basically the group of people that can time travel, and where they go to different back and forth to different dimensions, and they do whatever they want. Well, I wouldn't say whatever they want, but they discover different worlds and stuff, and from discovering those different worlds, they take them over. But I wanted to do a simple video on this to explain this stuff, because now God has given me the gift of basically He shows me something in a different dimension, and I need to emphasize on these things. So basically, best way I can explain it is science. Science and also comic books explain this, like the TV show The Flash. And you're talking to someone that's actually a comic book fan. DC Comics has they have, bear with me for a minute, they have an event that came out. It was called Crisis on Infinite Earths, where all these parallel versions of the classic characters of way back then, this is like, that story's like years old, way back then, see each other, meet each other, worlds die, and a lot of other stuff, right? And but my point is, but in science, there are actually studies behind this, even when you look in the CERN and you look at these movies and comic books and all this other stuff. They believe, and this is actually factual, they believe for that every action, for the minute, how can I explain this? The simplest term. For every action you've done in this life, and for every decision you've made, what you look like, what you feel, who you are, what family you're born into, a lot of other things, there's always ripple effect for that. So I talked about in one of my videos of how God showed me a universe where artificial intelligence basically controls everything, and in that universe I died. I had basically I had nubs, but they were like mechanical arms on some, they were like prosthetics or mechanical arms, but it wasn't on a transhumanism level. I was, they actually have this stuff in real life where people have robotic arms and they use it to maneuver around things, right? And so in that universe, I died. So, and this is me explaining stuff. So, for every moment, and I was right, and God actually has been confirmed me this after I even posted that video. For every moment where you could have died, or where you should have died, or whatever the case is, that has already happened in another world. For when people talk about doppelgangers, even though doppelgangers technically are demons, there's actually a lot of stuff that goes behind that, and there's a process of a human being, that's not of royalty, of a human being actually becoming like a demon. If you exclude stuff like rape, pedophilia, necrophilia, incest, killing people to a certain degree, joining secret societies, devil worship, and all this other stuff. There's also the fact of, sleeping around with somebody. There's your actions in which you don't care if a person dies or not. There's, lying, there's stealing, there's cheating, a lot of other things. So for every instance in life where you've wanted to kill somebody, you've killed that person with no remorse, and you've suffered that consequence. But in another world, you didn't do these things. I'm trying not to go everywhere with this because this is such a it's not controversial. They openly admit they do this stuff in these TV shows, and it's real. But in the Bible, it says that God's thoughts are not like our thoughts. His ways are not like our ways, etc. Basically, God is saying that I'm not human. I don't think like a human. Etc. Right? And so, for every action or every thought that you've probably had about how you want to do something in life, of how you've always wanted to be an artist or a musician, you've always wanted this dream job, you have that dream job, right? So these are real things. And before I go on that and go on that tangent, because I actually had to talk about the doppelganger thing. A doppelganger is a demon, right? But even though it's a demon, that other version of you that exists, and they explain this stuff real well in comic books and TV shows like The Flash. You basically, there's a gradual process of where you were once a person, but now you're completely evil and you've given your life completely over to the devil. So I used to do black magic, right? I got to talk about that, but I used to do black magic. I used to do astral travel, a lot of other things. In another universe, dimension, whatever the case you want to call it, I'm completely evil. And something simple as that. But in terms of, like how I mentioned in my video, how I'm an artist, I'm in my own band, or whatever the case is. These are thoughts that I've had, and gradually stuff I've always wanted to do, but it just never happened in my life. And, stuff is such like a shift change. There's actually a thing, they explain this in comic books real well, and they explain this stuff in the Flash TV show. There's an actual thing such as dimensions merging, such as things being in a universe that have never been there before, and people have no recollection of what have happened, such as the phenomenon that went on in China, where China, you can actually look this up, where China had a article on how their people were seeing 5 suns in the sky. Now, I'm not no scientist. I can only explain stuff to a certain extent to where my brain can see all, understand this stuff. But this is stuff that I'm talking about. So, and when people say stuff like, hell on earth and all these other things, like, this is stuff that obviously is inevitable and it is bound to happen, but it's complicated and it's weird, which is why God says my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways are not your ways, etc. Because if the more you dwell on stuff like this, the more it tends to your brain starts to overload, and it caps, and it meets a dead end. And if you don't actually have God in your life, you won't understand these things. And you especially won't understand these things of when these people say stuff like, winning World War II with time travel. There's actually a government project that the government did. I think it was called Project Montauk, Montauk. And basically, that might be it, where they basically send super soldiers into the past or future, whatever the case is, and they beat Hitler, in which technically Hitler won, but whatever. But they were able to stop Hitler basically from taking over the world. And I remember reading that a long time ago from Project Superman, the saga of Andy Pedro, where he said that they basically sent soldiers. If I remember this correctly, or if this is another story, or whatever the case is, they sent super soldiers into the past or the future so they could win the war, because they didn't want Hitler ruling the world. And there's a lot of stuff that went on behind Hitler, and Hitler wasn't the Antichrist. He was an example of what the Antichrist would be like, except he didn't come from whatever bloodline that these people have. It's a long story, and Hitler is also Jewish, by the way. His grandfather was Jewish. But anyway, and so they show these things in Tomorrowland by Disney. I mentioned a couple videos. There's stuff in comic books. They talk about this in books. This stuff is real sophisticated, and it is very complex. I remember way back when YouTube, before they started deleting people's channels, this was maybe 10 years ago, probably farther back than 10 years ago, because I'm 26, where people literally, scientists that used to work for CERN, that were actually approached by either the Men in Black or CERN themselves, or got this job. They were saying how they were working on with CERN, or whatever the case is, and time travel was a thing, since they show it in TV shows and whatnot. And they would leave. They left. They would come on YouTube and tell people about their story, their testimonies. They would have books. And they would talk about how what CERN is doing is completely demonic. They're basically altering history. In which case, another thing is about this time travel stuff. I forgot what movie it's called, but I think it's called Looper, or whatever the case is. Type in time travel movies on Amazon Prime, and there's a movie where a young dude is an assassin. He kills people through time travel, but he's emotionless when he kills people or whatever. But when it comes to killing himself in the future, 30, 40, 50 years in the future, he's unable to do that. And that movie, no one just comes up with a movie like that. When you talk about stuff about time travel, and I don't know about stuff in the 40s or the 50s, but when you talk about stuff about time travel and comic books, when you talk about stuff even at a basic, well, not at a basic level, but at an advanced level, from comic books to TV shows and video games, this stuff connects, and this stuff requires a research team and somebody of higher power to literally knows everything. So when you hear stuff like on the Flash TV show, I think it's season 2 or season 3, where they have to go to another universe and get some guy that was the Reverse Flash, or whatever the case was. They have to recruit a guy, and it's been I quit watching that show, but they have to get a guy that was once a villain in their timeline, and I think was dead, and they have to basically search, whether it be through technology or the Speed Force or whatever the case is. They have to search another world where he's been born and find the perfect version of himself, so they can understand what's going on. And to emphasize back on dimensions and universes and all this other stuff, there's a period in which you were born. So, for example, I talked about how there's a version of me that's an old man, that's an artist that can draw, but decided to quit his job. Draws for a living, does art, or whatever the case is. That's I was born in 95, and I was this tall, black, skinny dude, and funny because I was originally supposed to be 6'10", 7 feet, but I'm 5'6". That's years in years. I have to be born, for me to be that old, I have to be I'm not going to sit here and do the math, but I have to be born before basically the 70s or the 80s. Whereas in the Flash TV show, what is it? The guy they recruited in the second season was born. There's a period where he's born in the era of, I think, like Jack the Ripper. Yeah, I think so. But they show you all these alternative versions of themselves, and they basically bring them over to this dimension, which is a real thing. In which case, a prime example is Jay-Z. Jay-Z's a demon in human form, but that's a long story. But there's a picture. If you pause this video and you type in Jay-Z 1940s, there's a picture of Jay-Z in the 1940s of a man that looks exactly like him. And Jay-Z was born is how old? Like, in order for you to be born in the 1940s and for you to look the same way you do now, you'd have to be born, like years, before you were actually born in this dimension. And there's also such a thing as cloning and stuff, but that's a whole nother story. But these people can actually, I wouldn't say these people, but through the use of technology and through the use of fallen angels helping them, assisting them, these people can go into different dimensions or whatever the case is, and they claim that, I forgot, they claim they've discovered this amount of worlds that they've reached, where basically these people can, where they think they can escape God, which is false. Because God has shown me that there are worlds where basically he blows the planet up and he destroys the solar system. Was hesitant on saying that, but that's for another video. So when you hear this stuff, and when you see this stuff, and when you get stuff like deja vu, or when you get stuff, I can't explain deja vu, or when you get stuff like the Mandela effect, it's these people, or when you walk, or when you're walking suddenly and it feels off when you walk, which has happened to me before, or I talked about in a video where I'm walking and a bird freezes in midair and then it continues to fly. That's these people. Well, that's God, and God doing whatever he does, and then that's also these people messing with time. What else is there? And then there's also such a thing as the Mandela effect. Such stuff like, prime example, Sinbad, how he talked about how he gets pissed every time somebody mentions Shazam, and how that whole movie, that movie or whatever the case is, and turns out thousands, millions of people actually remember Shazam actually being in that movie, and it's an actual thing. God actually showed me a dream, or I don't know if this is another version of me or whatever the case is, running around with a Sinbad DVD, so I wouldn't get caught, because in that dimension or dream or whatever the case is, they tried to kill me because they don't want people knowing that that was an actual thing that was real, and that's real. And if it wasn't real, why are people like Sinbad getting pissed and aggravated every time somebody brings up that DVD? There's also stuff where people talk about the Monopoly Man, how he has a monocle, how he, and that isn't me doing the 666 sign. That's actually, the guy actually had a monocle. Where the guy has a monocle, a little glass like rich people way back in the day, how there's stuff like that. There's the Bernstein Bears, like there's Pikachu from Pokemon having a black tip at the end of its tail. Those are things that are actually real. I follow this guy named Black Balloon, and he talks about how these people try and deflect off this stuff because they don't want people figuring out that these people actually can travel back in time, do whatever, even though they still go to hell, technically. They still go to hell. But the point is that's why they come up with these psychological terms, and they tell you such a thing as a false memory. There's no such thing as a false memory. I talk about how I'm an entertainer, so this isn't a ministry page. Something also else I've been wanting to say, but I talk about how my passion for comic books, cartoons, and anime, and a lot of other stuff, because that was what I grew up on when I was growing up in the hood. Sometimes I would have cable, sometimes I wouldn't have cable, but times were different back in the early 2000s, and the 90s, where even if you didn't have cable, they would still show cartoons and stuff. So, I was always in front of a TV with cartoons and all this other stuff. I grew up on the era of Pokemon. I'm 26. Pikachu had a black tip at the end of its tail. The Monopoly Man, I played board games with my family in my house, had a monocle. I read the Bernstein, it's Bernstein Bears, Stein, not Bernstein Bears. These are real things. And I also talk about how I also grew up in church. There's a Mandela effect where in the Bible, I don't even know how this is even a thing. How in the Bible, after the flood happens, Noah releases a crow into the air when it's a dove. It is a dove. There's no such thing. I don't even remember that. I grew up, and when I mean to tell you, I grew up in church. My mom would be downstairs. She would be down in the congregation or whatever the case is. And, she was never part of a church. She would just go to church. They would have where you could have the kids, in the room where people watch you. And we watch these animated Bible videos. And it's even, I think it's is it Bruce Almighty? Or it's a movie where they basically, I forgot what movie it was. But where he literally releases a white dove. Like, you can't make this stuff up. And then there's and then there's also Tony the Tiger, how Frosted Flakes, how he apparently doesn't have stripes or whatever whatever the case is, and it's a tiger, bro. He has stripes. Johnny Quest, it's spelled JONNYQUEST, when if you spell the name Johnny, it has an H in it. Stuff like this is where these people literally, it's these subtle things, and there's even it's these subtle things that these people try and sit here and tell you that CERN is responsible for, even though that's partially it, but God is also responsible for, which is another reason why I say stuff like, when the shift change happens, completely, no one will remember these types of things, because God gives people subtle hints on time is changing, whether it be Bible verses changing, such as, releasing a raven instead of a dove, or whatever the case is. There's probably more behind that, and a lot of other things that you know in life. Trying to think of another one, but can't really. But that's what. So when I say stuff like shift change, a shift change basically is when, which one I could think of, is when. Well, they explain it in movies. When something suddenly happens in your timeline that you have no recollection of remembering, such as the Tower of Babel in the Bible. They actually found the tablet for the Tower of Babel recently. And I talked about in one of my videos how I was doing praise and worship. And when I start to praise God, I have a vision of a Babylonian king with a long beard, with his hands in the air. And randomly the next couple days, they find that tablet, which I don't believe in coincidences. And so during the Tower of Babel, there's a shift change where these people where they were trying to basically reach into the heavens and the atmosphere and reach God, which, fun fact, by the way, there's actually, what is it? There are portals around the world. This isn't some new age stuff that I'm talking about. There's actual factual stuff. The reason why they tried doing that is because there are portals in the sky. So when you see stuff, when people talk about stuff like I've heard people talk about how they see angels, how they hear things, they see things, they see creatures. There are portals in the sky. And fun fact, I actually discovered something. It's called, I follow this dude named In Time Productions. He's Christian. And what was it? It was, he's interviewing a guy, and he talks about how the Anasazi, it's Anasazi, and how basically they serve these, it gets into the giants and the flood, and how ancient civilizations are basically connected. They all know, they tell the same story over and over again, but in a different way. And to sum this up, they talked about how the guy was talking about how the Catholic Pope and I think and somebody else were trying to declare land over there, because over in the mountains somewhere, or desert, wherever the case is, where this stuff actually happened with this tribe that randomly disappeared, and without a trace, there are portals, there are entities coming through portals, and they were actually eating the people. They were these reptilian gods with halos over their heads, if I remember that correctly. It sounds like reptilians, demons. And how they were giants, and how they went from a peaceful culture to these giants were literally going around, roaming around, and they were eating the people that basically worship them, or whatever the case might be. And that's what I'm talking about. It actually brought pretty interesting stuff. Never knew that. But portals are a real thing. I remember watching a movie. It was what Adams, I think it was called Pixels or something, where video game characters come to life in the form of an alien invasion. And the guy that's the crazy conspiracy theorist, he says something around the lines of, there's a portal on under the Hoover Dam, and they always drop small stuff like that. And another example of like this dimension stuff in parallel universes, Mandela effect. The real example is in an interview, and I am one of the people that remembers these things, and you can read the comments if you look up that video. When Oprah Winfrey, who's a demon by the way, interviewed another demon, Donald Trump. It was an interview, and he said that if I was going to run for president, I would be Republican because Republicans are stupid. All of a sudden, when he became president, that video was either deleted from the internet entirely, or a Mandela effect happened, or a shift change happened, or whatever the case is. And hundreds and thousands and millions of people were in that comment section were saying that if you pause it at a certain time in that video, Donald Trump said those exact words and he became president. So this is what I wanted to talk about. And then also in terms of like, if you die in another world and all this other stuff, reincarnation is not real. I'm going to sit here and say that now. Once you die, you die. But how it gets into if you're born in a different time period and all this other stuff, I don't know. Don't care, really. Don't know how that works. Neither, you shouldn't care about that either. But the point is that if it's not given to you by God, this type of knowledge, this information, then it's demonic, literally. So I just wanted to sit here, explain that. I hope you understood this, because this stuff is like real complex and whatnot. So I just wanted to sit here and say that. I hope you have a blessed day. And I got other stuff I got to do today, but I got more videos to make because I got to say some stuff. And I also have to make TikToks because I want to say something about a dimension dream I had and what I saw. So I hope you guys have a blessed day. Comment, you want to know, you want to talk about it. And yeah.